I guess Germans would call it the November Revolution.
November Revolution.
Yeah. So you've got a building near here called the Humboldt Forum, which is kind of
Humboldt Forum. Okay.
Yeah. No one calls it that. The Berliner Schloss, the Berlin Palace.
Okay.
It's a kind of facsimile of that palace. It used to be where the East German Parliament was. It used to be where the royal family palace was, and that's in some part where lots of revolutions took place. So you have a kind of revolution in 1848, the first kind of proper big movement for democracy in Berlin or Prussia, as it was back then, before Germany was founded. Kind of. And then 1918, it becomes a focal point again of the revolution that pushed the Kaiser out, right? This is when Germany becomes a republic. So obviously the palace is a kind of symbol of that.
Yeah.
And then the building was kind of home to an East German government building, definitely home to an East German government building. Mm-hmm. And so that's where you also saw protests in 1989 as well. Yeah.
Is when that revolution happens, it happened before that Germany signed the Treaty of Versailles? Or?
Yeah, so the Treaty of Versailles was not properly signed, pushed through everything until, I forget the exact date, but my brain is telling me June of 1919. Okay. But Germany was being kind of backed very much into a corner October, November of 1918. Like they had been stretched very thin through World War I. Very, very thin. Germany had been cut off in the north where the coasts are, right? The Baltic Sea and the North Sea. And so supplies weren't getting in. Your regular person was like eating a lot less.
Okay.
A lot less variety of things. Like fats and oils were hard to come by. So it's like they can't make soap. They can't get leather, so they can't make shoes. Like imagine the three of us don't have shoes and we haven't showered.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be that happy.
Yeah.
Right? But you build that up over a good few years. And now, I mean, the three of us might well be dead as well, right? Yeah. We're all men that would have been sent to fight and get disease and get shot by a Russian or an American or a Frenchman or whatever. And so, if half your family are dead, you're also pretty unhappy, right? I would imagine.
Yeah.
And at the same time, the Kaiser or the Emperor was not a very appealing figure. Like he wasn't well liked by other royalty across Europe, people who he's related to as well. It was like, Cousin Bill is here, and I'm busy, and so he saw himself as this like great emperor, and he wanted to hold on to power. And the longer you hold on to power, I suppose, if you're losing, the worse you're making it. You have less and less and less to negotiate with, right?
Yeah.
And so, people keep getting killed in this war in France. The Western Front is the only one still going at this stage at the end of the war. And what's their goal? They've occupied a bit of France. What's their goal? What do they want? Like, this also isn't clear, right?
Yeah.
The French,
similar to a current situation also in the East.
Possibly. I mean, Putin's goal is pretty clear. He wants to take that.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he wants those parts of Ukraine to be Russia. Ideally for him, I think the entire thing.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't think Kaiser Wilhelm II was trying to take over huge parts of France.
They just wanted Alsace region.
They wanted Alsace, but they also want to, if they win the war, then they can say, you're the bad guys, so you're going to pay us all this money.
Yeah, okay, the winner puts
and
the terms and writes the history, right?
Yes. And they certainly needed the money. Germany had moved away from from backing all of its money by gold as soon as the war had started. So they're funding all of this war on promises.
Okay.
And it gets bigger and bigger and more expensive, and they don't have enough men to replenish the front. They don't have enough money to buy the weapons. And so like this economic situation is just getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And so eventually, up in the north in Kiel, the German Navy, who have been sitting on their hands for a couple of years because everything's so successfully barricaded by the British, they're told, right, men, go onto the ships, let's go out and let's fight the British. And they all know it's a one-way ticket. And so they're like, I don't know, this war's been going on for more than 4 years and I love being alive. I'm not going to do it. So you have a mutiny. The mutineers get arrested. That it's an injustice, obviously, for a lot of people. So this inspires more people to kind of join some form of resistance. This then spreads all throughout the country. The sailors become this kind of symbol of the revolution. They eventually come down to Berlin. The military, and Germany is essentially a military dictatorship during the First World War. The military, there's a certain point where the Kaiser calls a bunch of the officers together, and he's like, these sailors are causing problems. They're getting to Berlin. Why don't we go and like turn our army around and just like go and fight and take Berlin back? So he invites 50 officers to talk, and something like 35 show up, and only one of them is like, yeah, good idea. And so he's lost it. If 34 out of 35 people, again, like you can check those numbers, but roughly that. If they're not on your side, then like you've lost. And it was eventually the German chancellor, so the kind of head politician, who in the latter days of the war had a bit more power. His name was Prince Max von Baden. He unilaterally decided there's not a Kaiser anymore. Like, we're a republic. And then pretty much immediately hands power, or definitely immediately hands power over to the Social Democratic Party.
SPD.
SPD, yeah. Yeah, they were kind of split in two at this time because the left. The left likes nothing more than fighting each other. That's their favorite thing, man. Favorite thing.
Yeah.
But it is to say that this isn't like a revolution as a lot of people would picture it. It's very fractured. It takes place all over the country. You've got these two big kind of parties on the left who disagree actually about what this revolution should even be. And so everybody can accuse one another of doing the wrong thing. And this kind of, that's what sets the scene for this great new republic, this great new country, right? We didn't really agree on how we even got here. The war was absolutely horrible. And now the French are really angry. The Brits are pretty angry. And they want money, like a lot of money.
Yeah.
They want more money than the country's even got. Like
someone can also say we're not the French or who won the war, but it was the same German people through this revolution who made the war stop.
Yeah, you could argue that. But what a lot of people in the 1920s argued was exactly the opposite. Some people, far-right nationalist people, argued that those who agreed a ceasefire, an armistice with the French, were traitors to the country because we should have won. And we were fighting this war, and why did we lose the war if we're still in France? And
it's important to know the whole context, for example, how is all the economic aspects, because you could think why it always looked like, it looked like they're stuck in Verdun and all of this area on the West Front, but why didn't suddenly surrender?
Yeah,
was
absolutely.
money involved, or who
and so
was
that's how the Nazis, just to kind of finish off what I said, because otherwise it sounds like I was repeating Nazi propaganda. So I need to finish the last part, which is that's how they convinced a lot of men, mostly men who were maybe veterans, like who are now living in this very poor, cash-strapped country that probably was a shadow of its pre-war self, right? They convinced them that, it was the left wing. It was the communists, it was the socialists who were traitors. And of course, the far right would also say that there are an extraordinary number of Jews inside of those parties, and that also feeds into their worldview of Jews as traitors. Jews fought as regular soldiers in the First World War. And Prussia had a pretty good record of winning wars in the 19th century. And so racists after World War I used this as just one of the many little things that would convince people, right, to hate Jews, or turn their kind of preconception of like we don't like these people into real hatred. Because they said, well, at the first war where we let Jews fight, we lost, right? And again, they lost for such a multitude of reasons, none of which was German Jews in uniforms and in the trenches.
But it was easier to blame somebody.
It's so much easier to understand, isn't it? It's so much easier to understand. It wasn't you, you're great. It was him. And you can see how people were fooled. I don't think you can forgive them for their actions thereafter in the 1930s and 40s, but you can see how they were fooled.